Fix errors, waste, and issues in a couple of clicks. Get alerted whenever you're off track. Sign up at trueclicks.com.
Wix Studio, the platform for agencies and enterprises to manage clients and projects with max efficiency, sharing Wix's SEO tech to help you drive growth.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And yes, if you can't tell, I don't have a jacket like some of the other speakers. I'm very comfortable in this weather. But as mentioned, my name is Diane Kulseth, and I am with Site Improve. And we're going to be talking today about brand sentiment and how to maximize it for the search generative experience, which Gerald just spoke about. So, a lot of commonalities we'll be talking about. But first thing I want to do is I would like us to take some time to actually have a common definition of what is brand sentiment. So it can mean a lot of different things, but one thing I love to share with my customers is that brand sentiment is what people think, feel, and say about a particular brand. So some of that is things that you can track via social media, via your website traffic, via your search engine queries, but some of that is also kept internal by the customers themselves. And some of it they may eventually, publicize, but that's up to them. So you might be asking, okay, Diane, that's great, but what does SEO have to do with brand sentiment? So as we start to look at the search generative experience, we're starting to see a lot of things when it comes to branded search. Now, I know for those of you in the UK, you might not have spent a lot of time with search generative experience. So I'm curious, how many of you have had a chance to play with search generative experience so far? That's what I thought. Yeah, I see just a small sprinkling of hands at this point. So I'm going to refer to it as SGE. And in SGE world, brands don't actually own their branded search. So that can be problematic, right? We're used to, someone typing in, for example, Site Improve or, Site Improve SEO, for example, and we own that content. That's our website. We can go in and we can quickly say, okay, let's make sure we've got a landing page for that. Let's make sure that we're linking to some blog posts or our latest webinars. We can control that content. We might even have a knowledge, graph. So being able to then show, not only do we have our website, but we have our, Twitter X page, we have our Facebook page, we have our LinkedIn page, our YouTube. That changes a little bit with SGE. So to start off, I'm going to show you a standard query. Now this is for Tesco, and this is a search that I conducted while I was still at home in Minneapolis. So, I just searched Tesco in general, and I got what you can see as a standard branded result. I got Tesco.com. We have a little search bar, and then we also have some site links underneath, some details around groceries, clothing lines, where to find the local store, vouchers, etc. So that's pretty standard for most branded searches. They have their homepage, and then they have a couple of site links underneath. In an SGE world, so by then pressing on that generate button that's at the top of the search results, I get something that looks a little different. Instead of getting Tesco's website, Tesco.com, I'm now getting an article on Tesco, which makes sense. I'm searching for Minneapolis, so this is not a grocery chain that we have in the States. So I'm getting more detail on, okay, this is a British retailer. That makes sense. It's giving me details on when it was founded, which of course, since I'm not in Britain, I'm not necessarily looking to go shopping there anytime soon. It gives me a Wikipedia page. It gives me some global data from 2016 to 2022. And then it also gives me some stuff from Google's own knowledge graph. And then below, we have a couple different buttons that we can click. So details around who owns Tesco. Is there a Tesco near me? Tesco UK, to try to continue keeping that engagement on Google. Gerald brought up, Google's in the business of making money, and that's certainly the case. What we're seeing with SGE is that Google is trying to keep people on Google. They're trying to keep that information going, have you continue searching, have you asking follow-up questions, trying to get you to stay on Google, get your information on Google. So for those of us that are used to having 60% or more of our SEO traffic coming from branded search, this can be a bit problematic because in this world, what others think of your brand can and will power your search results. These are going to be articles from other websites. These are going to be data from other companies and organizations. This is going to be reviews. So as marketers, you might be thinking, okay, what can I do about this? Because this is changing everything, and we can't just go onto our webpage and optimize it for these different search terms. We actually have to look at, where are these other places and what are people actually saying about our brand? So first things first is to actually verify that your industry is going to be impacted by SGE results. So I've mentioned Site Improve, in Tesco, and showing you what that looks like. But there are going to be some websites and some industries where this is not going to be an issue. I'll give you the example of if someone's searching for, I think that I might have cancer, they're not going to just summarize an article, based off a bunch of different websites. They're going to want the most expertise, the most trustworthy websites for that. If you're looking into what should I do about my pension or my retirement, you're going to be directed most likely to an actual trusted financial resource and not simply a summarization of a bunch of different places, because those are your money, your life queries that we really want to make sure are actually being answered by the most trustworthy of sources. So first things first is to verify that your industry is actually going to be impacted. Now, right now, this is still kind of rolling out a little bit in the UK. I know they're testing it out, but, and if you've got friends in the US, I've had colleagues do this saying, hey, Diane, can you send me, we're trying to look up blank, blank, blank. Does this show up in SGE? And I'll run a search and yep, I can see that there's an option for the generative search result. And they'll say, okay, can you run that for me? And I'll pop over a screenshot, or I'll do a, Loom recording for them. So if you've got people that you can actually reach out to, or if you can, do like a VPN and switch to the United States, I encourage you to do that to kind of see, okay, what is showing up for a generative search query and what's not. Next is to get a pulse on what people are actually saying about your brand. So you want to start feeling out what are people actually going to be posting and what could actually be showing up in some of these results that we see on SGE. So there's a couple ways that you can do this. Certainly there are a lot of different brand sentiment tools that you can use to measure this, but I also speak with a lot of marketers daily, and a lot of times you don't have budget, or you just don't have the desire to even learn another tool on top of everything else that you're learning. So let's use some of the tools that you already have at your disposal, right? First things first, Google autocomplete. So, take a look at, use some questions and use some different prepositions when you're typing out your query. So to give you an example, when I was demonstrating this to our Site Improve team, I just typed in, is Site Improve? And let autocomplete fill in the rest. Is Site Improve worth the money? Is Site Improve legit? Is Site Improve, easy to use? So you start to get a feel for, okay, there's some underlying sentiment there. There might be some people that might think it might be a little pricey. There may be some people who are like, okay, where does this data come from? Is it legitimate? There are some people that are asking, is this something that I can use on my day-to-day basis? Is this too easy or too hard to use? So you're starting to get a feel for, okay, what are these things that people are asking about? You can also then take this further by looking at review sites. So if you're a brick and mortar business, certainly your Google business profile, your Yelp page, Yext, etc. Others for technology companies, you might be looking at, Trustpilot, TrustRadius, G2, Capterra, allowing you to then see what are people actually saying on a day-to-day basis. Now, of course, review sites will be more helpful for trends and not necessarily, getting every single sentiment out of every single review, because as we all know, people who leave reviews are a lot of times they like to more often leave a negative review. When they have a negative experience, they want to tell everybody about it. It's a lot less likely that someone goes to a restaurant and they're like, oh my gosh, this was the best restaurant ever. I'm going to now leave a review for it on Google. If they had terrible service, they're going to tell everyone. If they had really great service, okay, I might tell a friend. So certainly take your review sites with a grain of salt and use that more as what are some of the trends, and are there any pieces of constructive criticism that may be worth addressing? As Gerald mentioned, Reddit is another great place to go. So type in your brand name on Reddit, see what people are looking for. Sometimes you'll be surprised at conversations. I see all the time there are, plenty of conversations around, hey, I'm looking at using Site Improve. Is it worth my time? Is it worth my money? And you'll see people's responses. Is it worth my time or money to go to SimilarWeb or Conductor, where other speakers are from? And so you'll get to see some of those conversations from others in the industry and get a feel for what is that brand sentiment. We also have then blogs and social media. So of course, Twitter/X used to be the place where you could do a lot of this and see a lot of this, but we know that usage of that is going down. So take a look at TikTok, take a look at Facebook, take a look at even at LinkedIn, depending on if you're B2B, and see what are people actually saying about you there. Again, this is not something like we said with review sites where you want to do a very granular analysis, but more what are the trends? What are the things that you're seeing? And then finally, look at your keyword tool of choice. So what websites are also ranking for your branded terms? What else is coming up? I love using Google Search Console for this purpose. Much like I did Google Autocomplete with those questions, same with Google Search Console. Start looking to see, are there any particular questions? So type in, is Site Improve? Does Site Improve do X? Start to do that with some of your Search Console results and see, are impressions increasing for that? Look at, your other keyword tools and see what websites are ranking for that. Because it might not just be obviously your website right now, but there may be some others that may be taking a look at that. And those websites may be some of the ones that do get eventually prioritized within the search generative experience. So now we've started to get a feel of, how are people feeling about us? What are people saying about us? So now where do we go from here? Well, collaborate with your customer support and your brand teams. So what are people using currently to respond to any of these concerns? So I'll give you an example. Let's say someone is talking about Site Improve's policy tool and they say, wow, I find that that's really difficult to use. And I see that on, my reviews. I see that through my run through of Reddit, for example. Okay, well then I go to talk to Taylor on our customer support team and I say, hey, do we have a Help Center article around policy? If we do, great. What can we do to optimize that for search? Can we also maybe turn it into a video? Can we put that video on social media? Can we, add that to our LinkedIn so people can see, hey, we know that maybe that tool might be difficult to use. Here's the benefits of it, and here's an easy to use guide. Then those that are saying it's difficult, we can actually respond and say, okay, we hear you. Here's another guide for you. Can also work with our brand teams. So where else, are people talking about our brand? Maybe we want to work with a particular influencer. Maybe we want to, look at a different social media promotion. Maybe we want to run some videos on YouTube, for example. Being able to then talk with these different teams and see where are those avenues that we can start to maximize our brand presence, much like Gerald spoke about, will be really helpful. And then when it comes to those reviews and a lot of those negative reviews, take time to respond when appropriate, because some of these reviews can be constructive. And if your team can handle it, showing that you're actually responding to that criticism. So we'll say like the travel and hospitality industry, someone says, oh, that hotel was terrible and the front desk attendant was really rude to me. Being able to say, hey, we're sorry you had a bad experience. We spoke with that front desk attendant and, we're making some new policy changes to address, guest experience. That then shows anyone coming to those review sites that, okay, hey, they're actually addressing this. They're not just saying, oh, that's just a disgruntled visitor. They're actually taking some time to, take that seriously, essentially. And then the last thing that you can do with all of this is to set up tracking for your future SGE developments. So as I mentioned, each industry is going to have a different approach when it comes to SGE. So if you have Google Alerts, for example, you can type in your industry and type in search generative experience. So travel and hospitality, search generative experience, Google Alert. SaaS company, search generative experience. Financial, search generative experience. You get the idea. allowing you to then see, okay, if there are any updates for my specific industry, I'm now aware of them. I'm seeing the latest search engine journal. I'm seeing the latest search engine land, or even the latest updates from Google themselves. Additionally, you can use this for your own brand to then see, are there any new pieces of content coming up around, my company? That way you're staying on top of, any new blog posts, any new websites, etc. Site Improve has a lot of customers that use us for our web accessibility features. And so they'll have a policy that they write on their own university website. Hey, this is why we use Site Improve and how we use it. Those show up in search. And so if we have alerts on that, we then can see, okay, here's everyone that's mentioning us. And if we need to address anything that's being said on there, we can then reach out to those customers. So these are a lot of things that you can do. But now the really important question is, what do I tell my boss? How many of you have or currently work for a marketing leader that reads a headline, not the whole article about a marketing update, and they come to you and they're like, oh my gosh, we got to do something about AI. We have to do something about TikTok. Does anyone have that experience? I see a couple of hands. Okay, perfect. We have leaders who are like that will say, hey, I just read this headline. I read this thing from Business Insider or from Inc. or, whichever publication of choice. We now need to do something about this particular thing. Well, search generative experience, yes, there are things that you can do, but also this is very much still something that's in flux. This is not something that Google has rolled out completely. This is still something that's very much opt-in and in the United States as opposed to globally. So what do? Well, first things first, if you're able, try to get ahead of the rumors. So if you can, if your marketing leader hasn't come up to you saying, oh, what is this search generative experience? Try to schedule a conversation to say, hey, here's what you need to know about the search generative experience. If you have had a marketing leader that's come up to you and said, I read about this, what are we doing? These same tips still apply. But if you can get ahead of them coming up to you with that, then you're showing that you're being proactive about everything that's to come. So first up, emphasize that SGE is a moving target currently. Like we said, it's an opt-in currently in the United States. They're starting to run it, and testing it for, non-opt-in users just to see how they're reacting, because most of our opt-in users tend to be SEOs that want to see, what does this look like? Well, Google wants to know, how do everyday users use this? So emphasize that it's currently rolling out. We don't have a date for when this will happen. We also don't know that if SGE in its current state is what SGE is going to look like long term. We've all seen Google change multiple times over the years. So what SGE looks like today may not be what it looks like in 2 months. So emphasize to your marketing leaders, this is a moving target. If you are going to be collaborating with your customer teams or your brand teams, provide details on who you're talking to. Say, I've monitored these results. I've looked at results from these websites. I've found these insights. Now here's who I'm talking to, and here's what we're going to do. And show how you plan to stay up to date with the changes. Talk about your Google alerts. Talk about anything else that you might have running from a monitoring perspective, so they know that you're committed to keeping up to date with this very much thing that's in flux. So as we start to wrap things up, you've got some key takeaways. So when it comes to SGE as a whole, some key takeaways for you is 1, that brands don't own their branded search in SGE. 2, that brand sentiment is going to be what powers those SERPs. You're going to be seen from third-party websites. So the more that you can influence your brand sentiment through those third-party websites, the better results you'll see for your business. And 3rd, that not every industry will have SGE. So make sure you verify that before you take any action. Speaking of action, take some time to monitor your brand sentiment via a variety of those channels. So whether that be Reddit, whether that be blogs and social media, Google autocomplete, your keyword tool of choice, etc. Make sure you're taking some time to monitor. 2, collaborate with those that support your customer and your brand experience. And finally, respond to negativity when and where it's appropriate. And then, your takeaways for your conversation with your boss. First, emphasize that SGE is that moving target. 2, provide details on your approach and who you're speaking to. And then 3, outline how you plan to stay up to date with the changes. So once again, my name's Diane Kulseth. I'm with Site Improve, and we also have a booth downstairs with some Taylor Swift-inspired friendship bracelets. So if you'd love to learn more, we would love to have a chat with you later. But thank you so much.
Demand sphere. Limitless visual insights from the SERPs. Unlimited dashboards and users. Easy to use and easy to scale your growth to new levels.
Monthly reporting making you want to shove sharp things up your nose? Try Dragon Metrics, the all-in-one SEO software with mind-blowing reporting tools.